I'm Jess Dakotas.
And I'm Nick Koziel. Welcome to That Sounds Terrifying, the podcast where we share terrifying stories, we share listener experiences, and we visit virtually some of the most haunted places in the United States and the world. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of That Sounds Terrifying. I hope you're ready for some terrifying tales. We have a great guest with us, Ambika Devi, and we are so ready to hear some really great tales from you. So, welcome to the show.
I thank you very much. And it is an absolute pleasure to be here. I love telling these tales and stories because they happen to me. And it's something that fascinates me. I've always been interested in the fact that we're not really the only ones here. How could we be?
Mhm.
And I've lived in some really old houses in some very notoriously haunted areas. Uh, I grew up in an old farmhouse that, was in Pennsylvania, and pretty much everywhere there has a sign saying George Washington slept here, but goodness knows who else did, right?
Well, you're definitely in the right place to tell some terrifying tales, and we're really happy to have you here. And you're
Yeah,
also a writer. So
I
why don't you
am.
tell us
I
a little
am.
bit about that?
Well, I've been writing stories since I could hold a crayon.
Mhm.
And my earliest were inspired by the Mad magazines I would swipe out of my older brother's room. And the ones that I could understand in there were Spy versus Spy, which ran down the margin. So they were little graphic stories of a black and white colored little creature with a cone nose. And I thought, oh, okay, I should do this. So I was in third grade at the time, and we were just using wide ruled notebook paper, and it had a margin. So I thought, well, I am obligated to fill the margin with stories. So I would write these little graphic novels, and it didn't matter what the assignment was. And bless Mrs. Palmer's heart. She was my third grade teacher. Yes, I remember her name.
Mhm.
And she never said no. She didn't give me any flack about it. So I really had nurturing to be wildly creative. And I was never told no. And then I decided to get into writing articles for magazines uh, and then later newspapers. And I had a client at the time. I'm an astrologer, and I was advising this client who was working for a very big Fortune 500 company and running a sales team. So I respected her. She actually had me on retainer. She would call me before sales meetings
Oh,
and
wow.
ask me what to wear and which time of day is better to schedule the meeting. And yeah, I miss having that kind of client. I'm welcoming more. I do have plenty that I advise ongoing. But one day she just said to me, "You should write a book." And I don't think it had ever dawned on me, even though my mother was really into books and ran book groups, and we had a giant dictionary in the dining room, and that got opened pretty much every meal, to learn a new word or check a word. It was our form of Scrabble. We didn't actually play board games together. It was just a dictionary. And so it just kind of rang a bell, and I thought, all right. So I started thinking, well, what would I write about? And I had been challenged by a professor when I was getting a degree in astrology to write a book that would be with astrology. It would have astrology as its underpinning, but never end up in that area of a bookstore. So it wouldn't be a metaphysical book, So I thought, okay, but I still couldn't get off of the idea of a numerology kind of based idea. And I thought, well, astrology is based on 1 through 12. I'll make mine 13. I'm Scorpio. What can I say? You can shame
Same.
me. You can shame me if you want, but we're into mysterious stuff. Am I right, Jess?
Sure
And
are.
so the first title of this book was 13, the number of the goddess. I've always been interested in mythology too. One of my first favorite books was on Greek mythology, also in third grade.
Mhm.
And I think I did a book report on it with some sort of running novel down the margin. And for 3 years, I worked on it. And then I found out about a guy who had a restaurant. He was a chef, and anybody who can cook is a friend of mine. And he also was a publisher. And he had a book that he wrote, a picture of him with a big chisel and hammer on the cover, and he was chiseling this gorgeous chocolate cake. I thought, I want to meet this guy. And he was nearby where I lived in Arizona at the time. And I heard that they had a group. If you want to write a book, we'll coach you, we'll nurture you. Anyway, so I end up talking to him. He's like, I'm really sorry we stopped the group, but tell me what you got. So I told him about what I started with 13, and he was like, sounds interesting. Why don't you come have a meeting with me? So then I hired him as a writing coach, and 10 years later, so total of 13 years,
Oh,
book
wow.
was first called 13. I published this book, Lilith, with him. And he had told me during the whole time I was working on this, you can't write a self enrichment book for your first book out of the gate. You have to write a novel. That's what took me so long. So he would tease me with prompting, and I would write essays. And a lot of those essays ended up getting woven into this book. He also told me that your first book is about you, especially if it's a novel, even if it's fiction, which this book is, but a lot of me is embedded into the characters, and there are characters based on people I've known. One was my college boyfriend when I went to university the first time, because I'm an uber nerd. I have a lot of degrees. And he and I are still in touch on social media. And when I was getting ready to publish the book, I looked up anybody who maybe could have become offended, or wanted to know that I wrote about them, or maybe not. And and I contacted Donnie. His name's Donnie, and so is the character in the book. And he said, not only do I think this is awesome, use my name. And I said, well, I'm using your first name, but I'm changing the last name. And so I sent him a signed copy of it, of course, and he thinks it's awesome. So there you go.
Very
Always
cool.
ask people when you're writing about someone, unless they're ghosts, you know, that's on
Right.
you. That's on you. But there are ghost stories in there, because when I was finishing the book, when I was getting close, I took my laptop on a romantic getaway vacation to Asheville, North Carolina. I'd always wanted to go there. And it was autumn, and I live in Florida now, so I miss those leaves, those the colors. And that's when my birthday is, in the autumn, when the leaves used to change in Pennsylvania. So my laptop and I decided to go to Savannah, Georgia. I had been to New Orleans already
Mhm.
with many times, with the purpose of ghost hunting on some of those. And I heard Savannah was pretty similar. So I thought, well, why not hang out in Savannah a little on the way to Asheville, both ways, going and coming, and explore. So some of those stories got in there. And even the day I took a pedicabs are bicycle cabs,
Mhm.
where somebody's riding a bike and you're in a cart like royalty. And I wrote quite a bit of Lilith that day when I was riding around, and I happened to get a great cab driver who was a storyteller too, and we just had a ball. So
Very
there's
cool.
even pictures of me writing the book in the pedicab.
Nice. So we're kind of in Savannah, Georgia right now. So do you want to like start maybe there and then
Sure.
tell us a couple?
Yeah, so the pedicab's driver's name was George. He also said I could use his name. And we started out, I had walked far from the main square, uh, where I was staying in a B&B, up to the market area, which is closer to the river. This is all Old Town, downtown. Look at the map, everybody. Such a cool city. Go visit it. And it was hot and I was tired and I just wanted to be driven around and told stories. So I walk up to this line of these cabbies and they picked me. They had a pecking order and
Mm.
I lucked out. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to see squares and I want to hear some stories." And so the first thing he did was take me around one that was nearby and there was a wedding going on. I thought, well, that's, it was a Saturday, not that weird. And then we went to another one, there was another wedding going on. And then and I thought, well, this isn't really what I was going for.
Mhm.
But symbolic of something. And we're heading to another area and we're at a traffic light and he twists around in the seat and he says, "Do you want to see the most haunted house in Savannah?" And I went, hard pass. No. Because I'm super sensitive. I mean, I can talk to these
Mhm.
beings. And so he takes me there and he parks in the square across from the house. It's on Abercorn Street. And I'm feeling it. I mean, I'm feeling it as we're entering the area. And I'm like, "George, no, I don't really." And before I knew it, we were parked right in front. And he said, "You tell me," because he had told me some stories about other places we passed, some of the old buildings. And he said, "This time you tell me." So what did I do? The first thing I do is I run up the steps because the way the buildings there, they have kind of a sub basement that has windows that you can see the sidewalk there. And then the proper first floor is up steps. So I run up the steps and dumb me, I touch the building.
Mm.
I'm just like filled with visions. And he's watching from across the square, from across the street on the edge of the square. He didn't come up near the building, smart man. And then I run down and I run around the side of the building and he actually chased after me. And then I run back to the cab and I said, "Get me out of here now." And he said, "Where do you want to go?" And then he starts pedaling and he says, "There's a big Catholic church here." I said, "Perfect." So he took me to the church. I ran inside and got a handful of holy water and just doused myself. And then I get back in the cab and he said, "So what did you see? What happened?" So I proceeded to tell him stories of three different families that had been there. The first, I saw a young girl tied to a chair, forced to look out the window and watch children playing in the square, who was pretty much tortured to death. I mean, this is horrifying, terrifying. I don't even like talking about it. But then there was another level of that. All she wanted to do was go out and play, but her father was just really nasty. And then I saw another kind of similar story play out. And then when I ran around the side of the building, what I saw was a card game gone bad and people getting ousted. And so I tell him the details of all these stories, and I'm still. I had taken a bottle in with me, and I filled it with holy water, and I'm like putting it on him and putting it on me and chanting. And I'm starting to feel better. And I said, "How did I do?" And he said, "Not only did you nail it, you nailed it chronologically."
Mm.
So I was like, "Okay, great. Have I been back there? Yes. Have I walked through that area? Yes. Will I go up to touch that building again? Heck no. You
Mhm.
know? And then I got fascinated with the second most haunted house in Savannah, called the Sorrel Weed House. And I made friends with guides that give the guided tours. They do daytime tours, and then as years went on, they started doing nighttime tours and overnights. So I'd been back to this house lots of times. I've done the overnights with the infrared and the spirit finder radio receivers and all kind. I mean, that particular one, spooky as heck. There was one time I was in the basement, which is where there was a surgery. This was, Civil War time. So when I say surgery, it's not like what you see in a
Yeah.
hospital. It's kind of, maybe something that looks sort of like a massage table, and, who knows what kind of gardening tools being used.
Mhm.
And there, one of the proprietors of the house was very fascinated with healing and did do amputations and things. And I think they probably only had alcohol for anesthesia and also antiseptic. And there was a notorious entity in that basement area that they would warn you if you went on a tour, do not wear hoop earrings. It'll pull the earrings out of your ears. And so, I mean, I complied. I'm not going to tempt fate like that. And I was on a daytime tour, and there was this woman that I started talking to, and she was not feeling well. And I said, you need to get out of here. You need to get out of this space. She obviously was attracting something and experiencing it. And the tour was going upstairs anyway. And we went into an area where there were seats where you were allowed to sit in the house. And I sat her down and I looked at her arm, and it had a grab. This is something that can happen. An entity can grab you, and it doesn't just bruise the skin, it actually burns it. And she had a very clear one. I shot pictures of it, of course.
Mhm.
And I tried my best with water and, calming her energy down, but she was not good for the rest of that afternoon. Um, on on my many occasions in the Sorrel Weed House, especially if I would be walking by at night, because I would walk around at night. And uh, this was a story of a slave who was in love with the owner's son, and he became the proprietor of the house. And then she hung herself in a slave quarter, which was like a stable kind of building just across the back garden area. And or was she, or did she, did someone do it?
Mhm.
That's the whole mystery of that one. And in the main house there are two parlors, a ladies parlor and a gentleman's parlor next to each other. And the gentleman's parlor has this mirror that's very notorious, with a painting of him, of the proprietor, that faces a mirror. So when you're looking in the mirror, you can see the painting, and it's one of those paintings that the eyes follow you around. But on many of my nighttime walks around this building, I had seen something that looked just like a gremlin from the Harry Potter bank
Mhm.
in Diagon Alley area, and with the nose and the ears short. I'm shorts, but this, it wasn't even my height. And I kept trying to get pictures of this creature. And sometimes, I swear to you, he would turn around and laugh and just whoosh.
Mhm.
So I'm getting ready to do an overnight in the Sorrel Weed House, and I'm in the gentleman's parlor because I got invited to go on a tour that night. And because I was arrived early, and my friends who were taking off for the night, that were the guides, were going to hand me over to the overnight team. So I thought, okay, sure. They invite me to go on the tour. Why not? I'll walk around the house. I'll take some pictures. I'll meet some people. And we're in the gentleman's parlor, and our guide says, everybody take your camera, which are, of course, cell phones at the time, and shoot a picture in the mirror, and we'll see what everybody captures. and he was pointing like this with his finger out and his other fingers kind of curled. That's what I'm doing if you're just listening, everybody. And I shot a picture, and dang if it wasn't the gremlin in the mirror mocking him. So doing the same position with his hand, but fur all over the hands, pointy ears, pointy nose, and an extra finger. 6 fingers.
Wow. Would
Oh,
love to see those photos if we can share them with the
yeah.
audience. That'd be
Oh
great.
yeah. I will find it and give it to you. Absolutely.
Very cool.
So that was satisfying.
Yeah.
And then I lived in a stable in Pennsylvania for 10 years that was zoned a natural resource. It was built in the 1700s, and it was a stable that was part of a stagecoach stop. The inn was across the street, but the properties had been separated from each other and become
Mhm.
2 different ownerships. And there was a ghost of a farmer in the house, and we would see him with buckets and some animals too. Friendly, not a problem with that one. But sometimes we'd hear doors opening and closing, because even when we renovated the building and built up and out, we preserved the stable doors that open for the horses to go outside. And we would hear those opening and closing or creaking, and yeah,
It's interesting.
not scary.
Have you always had sort of that kind of ability to kind of feel things, sense things, see things, or did it like kind of come later in life?
I believe the truth, Nick, is
Mhm.
that we all have that, but
Right.
it gets trained out of us. But
Mhm.
remember, I mean, if you go back to, I was allowed to draw graphic novels and fantasize and, you know, fictionalize or not, or tell stories. And I was encouraged to read a lot
Mhm.
and explore. And I did have the great gift of growing up near woods and played in the woods. And some of the older kids taught me to build fairy houses, so I really believe in fairies and always did. And I visited a lot of places around the world where fairy culture is very, very vogue.
Yeah.
Like uh, the UK and Norway. Norway's interesting.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
Cool.
Scotland, wow. Going in some of the old castles where Mary Queen of Scots hold up, or
Mhm.
underground. If you ever have the opportunity to go to Edinburgh,
Mhm.
go in the underground. There are, I mean, that's a whole different world, whole different world.
I've been to Edinburgh, and I did do the underground piece of it. There were a ton of
Mhm.
people left down there, especially during the plague and everything, when they were just basically burying people alive underground.
Mhm.
Um, but these 3 bits were the ones that were like showing themselves to me. And it
Mhm.
was very interesting. And I was like, I don't know what to do with that. So I laughed. Like, I didn't like, what do you do with that? I didn't,
Talk
and
to
plus
them.
well, I was too young. I was too young at the time.
uh,
I
yeah,
wasn't in my own yet, right? So I was
gotcha.
in college. Um, and so it wasn't anything, but I just remember that so strongly, and kind of regretting not being able to do that. So someday I will go back to Edinburgh, and actually I have a friend right now who I went to Edinburgh with. They're back there right now as we speak, which is kind of
Oh,
funny.
fun.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there
Uh,
are so many areas that, I mean, where the tours go is just a tiny portion.
Mhm.
And if you can stay in that older part of town, uh,
mhm,
where all the closes are, that's what they're
yeah.
called. That's pretty fascinating. And then, wow, I mean, some of the old churches. I've
Hmm.
been with groups where we're going around dowsing ley lines and, uh, and going to Neolithic mounds, and
Mhm.
I've been to 30 countries exploring stuff. So, and then, I mean, there's things like the Caribbean that's got some interesting stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I live on the Treasure Coast of Florida, which is called the Treasure Coast because pirates buried a lot of stuff here. And it also happens to be one leg of the Bermuda Triangle. People don't realize the triangle comes all the way into the land.
Mhm.
It's
Oh,
not out
wow.
in the ocean. I live in the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's more energy where you are?
Well, I can feel energy everywhere, but what I think is really interesting of what I notice is that you could be in an area that's just whack. I'm going to use a
Hmm.
technical term, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just whack. And then all of a sudden you can find a sweet spot
Mhm.
or quite the
Yeah.
opposite. You know, we have to understand polarity. I remember one day I was in England with a group and we went on a hill that belongs to Bridie or Bridget, St. Bridget. And we all became very tired and we laid
Mm.
down and we all dreamt. It was really, it reminded me of The Wizard of Oz where the poppies put everybody to sleep.
Mhm.
You
Hmm.
know, we couldn't stand up anymore. We had to lie down and we all had dreams. It was
Mhm.
fascinating.
Were they different dreams or the same dream? Because it'd be cool.
Different dreams.
Okay.
You know, because
Yeah.
everybody's got, you know, a dream is a very personal thing. But
Mm,
do I talk to and encounter things in dream state? Absolutely.
right.
Are they
Mhm.
always sweet and amicable? Heck no. Um, you know, I think there are layers, and we can see it in the artwork of people like Alex Gray, you know, of things that are peeking at us, you know,
Mhm.
maybe even down something like a microscope watching. I
Mm.
remember being a tiny child feeling that and sensing it and saying, stop watching me.
Mhm. That's it.
Yeah. I used to get
That's
those
scary.
feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to get those feelings too. I would be like, I would tell my mom because I was too little, and I'd be like, Mom, I feel like someone's watching me. I feel like someone's watching me. I feel like someone's watching me. And she'd be like, It's all right. Nobody's here. Nobody's here. And I'm
Mhm.
like, Nope, there is. There's somebody here. They're watching me. They're watching me. And I remember feeling it's a feeling of vulnerability. Like you
I
know,
would see the eye, like when you're looking in field glasses and your friend is looking, you know, through the proper end, and
Mhm.
you look in
yeah.
and you just see the eye, you just see their
Mhm.
eye huge. Um, I remember that distinctly. And I guess I just started talking to them back then.
Mm.
Fortunately, no one thought I was nuts or committable, and it turned into being really good stuff for writing. You
Mhm.
know, and now it's the point where, you know, anything you do or say can be used in one of my stories. So just be careful around me if you don't want it to
Well,
end up in one of my
I'll
stories.
tell you something real quick that's kind of going on now that I shared with Jess off the air. There's a little touch light. It's like a little kind of nightlight thing next to my bed, and we have it there for when we had the kids, come in and we need a little nightlight kind of thing. And so I use it because sometimes it's like nice and bright. It's just bright enough where my eyes aren't killing me or whatever. And so I've looked into this thing a couple different ways, but one of the things that has been happening lately is it's been turning on in the middle of the night. And so when I researched it, these lights are notorious for doing it by themselves anyway, like notorious. But the weird thing was, um, it goes in a specific order. It's like red, green, blue, white, yellowish, red, like goes in that order. But what I was noticing was, and granted, I'm half asleep waking up to this, like it come on this bright blue color. I turn it off and then I kind of start to nod off. And then all of a sudden I realize it's back on bright blue color. So it's not going in order.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so this happened just the other, I didn't tell you this last night, Jess. This happened just the other day. So I was alone in the room and it was like almost midnight and the the light came on and I went to turn it off, but then I kind of hesitated and I said, do something different. And right after I said that, it flashed through all the lights, like every single one, bam, 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 bam. And then I turned it off and I'm like, I'm going to bed.
Okay, so at that point, I recommend asking and requiring some kind of clear communication.
Yeah.
You know, I think we get afraid. I think a lot of people are afraid because they haven't really encountered death
Mhm.
and they haven't come to terms with death.
Yeah.
You know, maybe nobody important died in your family. Maybe you've
Mhm.
never been to a funeral. I happen to have had the opportunity at an earlier age when my grandfather, my father's father, died, and we had to go to the funeral, and there was an open casket, a viewing, and my older brother, who I used to swipe the Mad magazines from, so you can kind of get his sense of humor, right?
Mhm.
He had the duty of taking me up to say goodbye to Grandpa.
Yeah.
So we're standing there, just the two of us, because we're, immediate family, so nobody's crowding us. And he leans down and he goes, "Touch it." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to touch it. You touch it."
Mhm.
And we have this argument standing there, and he takes my hand and makes me poke the body's cheek. I'm like, this is not a human body. I mean,
Mm.
it is not. And so I got a very clear sense of, when you die, you're not in there anymore. Get over it. Because
Mhm.
that was just wax, it felt like. I mean, it was
Mm.
just,
It does feel like that. Yeah.
it's just weird. And then,
Mhm.
so that was when I was a little kid. And then when I was in high school, when I was a senior, all the seniors had to do a senior project, meaning we had 6 weeks where we left school and we went and worked in the field on something we were interested in. I went and worked at a ceramic studio. It was super fun. I had a colleague, another student who was a friend of mine, who wanted to be a mortician. Now,
Mhm.
I had listened to her talk about this all year long. I mean, this is somebody who knew she wanted to do this. So that also really helped me get over, like, here's somebody who wants to serve that, who wants to
Yeah.
help people. And I think those two experiences planted something in my mind. Years go by, I become a musician, because I've had multiple jobs and many at the same time. And I worked as a professional musician, and I played a lot of weddings. I played in 19-piece orchestras with some pretty famous musicians.
What do you
And
play?
drums and voice. I'm a singer.
Cool.
And and the drummers are the smart ones. We're the ones who can we're the ones who can do math. We're usually the band leaders, but I wasn't in these orchestras. I actually played with Lyle Lovett's drummer. He's awesome. Dave
Oh,
is
cool.
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. And I played with Stevie Nicks' rhythm section. These were corporate bands. We played big corporate functions and super high-end weddings,
Mhm.
Vera Wang dresses, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, super high-end. And yeah, it was cool. It was
Yeah.
fun. So I'm digressing. Um
That's okay.
uh,
No, I
yeah,
like, well, with the light thing, like, again, I'm not 100% sure that that's what's going on, because like it is older and it's sold to my kids. So, but anyways, that was just weird. And I was sharing that story with Jess off the air, and that sort of thing just kind of happened. And I'm like, oh, and I wasn't really scared. I was just like, all right, well, that's something different. And I'm like, I'm tired. I'm gonna go to bed.
but then
So,
what do?
but
You pull the blanket over your head and you stay there.
no, it's annoying more than anything else, because like I'm a kind of person that I like it to be completely dark, right,
I
when
do
I'm
too. I
sleeping.
do too. That would annoy me.
Same. Yeah.
So it was, and I've gotten to the point now where like I'll unplug the USB
I
to
was
it to
just
like,
gonna say,
yeah,
what happens when it's
Just
unplugged? Does it
unplug
do
it.
it?
it that hasn't yet. I mean, that'd be something different, and then then,
That would be my experiment. I
but
personally can't sleep with something plugged in around my bed. I
yeah,
can't.
yeah.
But
Well, these,
I get your need with the
yeah.
light and the children.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And not to be silly, it's just like they say that like even now you've got there's perception, like if you sleep with your phone by your bed and your phone is on, you can actually perceive when messages are coming
Of
through and
course
things
you
like that.
can.
You're getting that, right? So like it's best to turn it completely off or not even have it in your room, because
I
you're
don't
still,
recommend having it
yeah.
within 30 feet of where you're sleeping.
For
Seriously.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm way too sensitive for that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. everything has to be blacked out
Yeah.
and the right temperature. But you know, as far as communicating, I mean, I've got a couple monitors on my computer system, and they're near the area where I watch television at
Mhm.
night. Yes, I watch TV, and get over it. Netflix junkie, admitted, and
I love Netflix.
Yeah.
yeah, and I love sci-fi, and I mean, sometimes you know, I watch rom-coms. I am not embarrassed to admit it. I write all kinds of stuff, and I like to be a part of what other people are creating like that. But
Mhm.
I have a thing with these monitors. You know, the system is down, everything's sleeping. All of a sudden, the monitors come on blue.
Mhm.
It's like
Mm.
they don't come on black with a word; they just come on blue.
Yeah.
And I'll go, "Hey, go to sleep," and they'll shut off.
That's crazy.
Seriously, you know,
Yeah.
it is weird. So try talking to it. That would be my first experiment.
Mhm.
And then, you know, if it's got something to say, try and remember the sequence. If it's giving you Morse code,
Oh my
you
God. Yeah,
know,
I'll have to videotape
translate
it
it.
or something.
Yeah, or just, you know, say you know, one for yes, two for no, or
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah,
you
that's a
know,
simple way.
and
If I
ask some questions, because like back to the Sorrel Weed
Yeah,
House, you know, some of the standard ghost hunting equipment picks up
right.
random radio waves, right?
Mhm.
What they call them, ghost boxes. They
Yeah.
have several names. And I've used them at different sites. There's a very notorious site here in Florida that I've been to, Casadega, where I've gotten some really weird uh, photographs, and also most definitely some interesting conversations. I was with a couple people there who had this, and we were trading equipment. Sometimes I had the infrared camera, and when I heard the one person talking to the ghost box, and it was just going, you know, making weird noises. And then I called over to her and I said, "Hey, let's trade." And very clearly a voice said, "Yes, we like her." So we
Hmm.
traded, and then I
Perfect.
got into a conversation with this. When I was in the Sorrel Weed House, though, a lot of them spoke French,
Oh.
Mm.
and my French is a bit rusty, but good enough. And I was definitely carrying on conversations. One night in the basement in the surgery area, I was shooting photos just with my camera on my phone, and there was a battle that took place in the square just outside of this house,
Mhm.
right across the street. A very intense battle, and marching through the basement were about 25 British soldiers, only from the waist down.
Mhm.
So I could
Oh.
see the tails of their coats, I could see their legs, I could see their boots, I could hear them, I could feel the air current moving, and they went right through the wall.
Mhm.
I mean, if you want to have an experience, definitely check that out, because it's not like Abercorn Street. I don't recommend going there. I've talked to contractors who tried to renovate things in that building, and not good
Yeah.
people. That one
Yeah.
needs I don't know what it
Cleansing.
needs. I won't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going in it. And people have tried to renovate it and live there. Don't do it.
Mhm.
Sorrow Weed House, somebody is living way up in the top of that,
That's
which is,
Wow.
interesting.
yeah, but that one definitely has some action.
Well,
So speaking of all this, when it sounded like you were very not afraid, but at the Abercorn house, it was a this has to get off of me. I feel yucky from this. I don't like this negativity. Have you ever had an experience? Because it sounds like you've been open since a child. I assume your parents were very open as well
No,
to all of.
mm-mm, no,
No,
not
wow,
no, but didn't say no.
but didn't say no. That's cool.
You know,
Um,
yeah, they
but
respected.
were you ever afraid then as a child? Like, has there ever been a time where you were like, I am afraid of this?
I didn't really want to touch my dead grandfather.
mhm.
Yeah.
You know, I could definitely say there was a moment there,
Mhm.
but just because of that dynamic of my brother and I was like, fine, you know.
Mhm.
And even
I
though,
I also touched my dead grandfather,
okay,
um, with my cousin Luke, who was like, and I feel horrible about it. I was 9 when he
Mm.
died. And
I
Luke
was
was like,
9 also at
yeah,
that
Luke
story,
was
yeah,
like,
or I
touch
was
it,
8,
touch it.
maybe 8, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, and I remember being like, I don't want to, I don't want to. I remember that. But then I was like, fine. And I remember touching his forehead. Um, and I felt, exactly like how you said, like it didn't feel like he was there anymore. He didn't look the same. I've been to
Mhm.
many funerals in my life. It
Waxy is
doesn't.
all I can come up with,
Yeah, you're right. It was like that. And like, then in school you dissect frogs and worms, and those are waxy too. Um
and the smell of
ye-
formaldehyde. That's
yeah.
when my friend from high school said she wanted to be a mortician, I could almost taste the formaldehyde, and I'm thinking,
Nice.
Yeah.
why? You
Well,
Mhm.
know?
yeah, but you're like you said, it's a service, and
Yeah.
thank God that some people are called to those things,
Yes,
to ser-
absolutely.
I can't deal with blood and guts. Thank God there are people that can do that, and they're
Mhm.
doctors,
Right, but
and
I grew
ambulance
up I grew
workers.
up on a little horse farm, so there were animals that
Mhm.
died,
Mm,
and
mhm. Oh.
and a horse that was born stillborn, I mean,
Mm,
Mhm.
there was some tragedy.
yeah.
I had a cat that was a really important animal. Sometimes there's just one person or one animal, one pet that you are so attached to
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
when they go, regardless of
Yeah.
how that happens, you mourn, you
Mhm.
Yep.
grieve, even
Mhm.
before. And I had to take an animal to a vet on a very macabre rainy day,
Mm.
like a cold, wintry day, freezing rain, and have the vet inject and
Mm.
give a lethal injection. And I was holding the cat with my arms around it, and the cat took their paw and reached out and put it on top of my arm.
Mhm.
And I just thought, but I knew I was putting this cat out of misery. It was in horrible
Right.
pain.
Mhm.
Right. It
And
was
that
a gift.
gesture, I think that really helped, although I did bust into tears for years after that. I
Yeah.
still
Mhm.
can. I can still feel a little bit of tearing just from the
Yeah.
compassion. Um, but then I have had other people die. I mean, my parents are gone. You know, Lovers. Actually, my newest book, Cupid is a Bastard,
Mm.
is about love and loss, because this
Mm.
is my pandemic project, and my mother had died right before we got locked down. She died in late 2019, and I had
I'm
already
sorry.
been writing
Mhm.
you don't have to be sorry, people die.
Mm.
It's just, but I get it, we say that, but why? Why? I got really ticked when people would say, I'm sorry. It's like, don't be sorry. She was 97. My God, she had a
Oh,
great
wow.
life.
Yeah.
She had an incredible life, and I
Yeah.
left my music career to come to Florida to spend 12 years with her. What are you sorry about?
Mhm.
Right.
You should, and she did not want me there holding her when she died.
Mm.
And so a hurricane was coming, Hurricane Ian was coming. And she was in an assisted living right around the corner from me. And I had to board up the house. Well, shut her up, but same, you get my idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And and I could not have her stay there because she had 24/7 people taking care of her that I was in charge of. And the only choice was move her inland to
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
hospice house. So I board up the house. She's moved, and then 2 days go by. I'm boarding up the house, and I knew she was going to go.
Mhm.
And Hurricane Ian is just trashing the Bahamas. And I wake up this morning and I think this is it. And I talked to her nurse at the hospice house, and I said, just call me when it happens. And he said she even talked about me, like before. And,
Mm.
all I could do was send love, but she didn't want me there. And look what she orchestrated. I was
A
boarded in a
hurricane.
house. She got moved to another place. I had no choice. I'm sitting here in the dark with candles. And I said to the nurse the day before, I said, I think a lot of souls are going to leave when this hurricane moves. And as
Mhm.
soon
Mm.
as it started moving off of the Bahamas, within an hour, almost everybody in that hospice house left,
Wow.
passed.
Jeez.
I know, I get chills.
Ooh.
So not only am I sensitive, but I guess I'm a bit predictive.
Yeah. Yeah, you had that sense. Interesting. Wow. Well, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your stories today and your books. And can you just tell everybody where they can find you?
Absolutely. All you have to do is know my name, everybody. Ambika Devi. So I'll spell it for you. AMBIKADEVI. And then just put .com or put my name, Ambika Devi, in a link tree, and you'll find everything. My books are easily available on my website, and it's ambikadevi.com. Come visit. Send me a message if you need some help with working through some of this stuff. Just talk to me. You can make appointments with me. You can join my newsletter. I never flood you, maybe one a month. And you can subscribe to my blog. And if there's something you want me to tell a story about or teach, just ask me. It'd be my pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you so
Fantastic.
much. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, whether it is Ambika's favorite drink, which is dry sake, or ghosts, everybody keep your spirits up.